Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. Tammy will be joining us in just a little while, but to get us started out, I would like to introduce you to Catherine Stetton and uh, Deidre Wesley, and they are with DHS, and they will be they are the EPIC program staff. So I could go ahead and turn it over to Kathy and Deidre.
Good afternoon. Do we know who's on the phone, or you already did that, Natasha?
We have a whole lot of people on the phone, so we'll just go ahead and get started. A bunch of our CBOs, about 23
Okay.
people.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Staten, and I am the Associate Director for the Office of Workforce Development. In that office is the Employment and Training Contractors, the Workforce Development Unit for TANF and SNAP, and that unit is responsible for helping us to maintain our participation rates for both TANF and SNAP. The two teen parent services offices here in Cook County, and most recently the EPIC pilot. Those units fall under the Office of Workforce Development. And I am so glad to be almost all the way staffed up for EPIC. So we have our most capable project manager for EPIC, and that is Deidre Wesley. We have her assistant, Diana Doss, and we also have our research liaison, and that is Miss Lisa Sparks. And so they're here with us today. And so for those of you on the phone who are familiar with SNAP Employment and Training Policy, this will be a review. For those of you who may not be familiar with the policy, we wanted to just talk about it a little bit just to give some foundational information about SNAP Employment and Training Policy. So the handouts that you received came from our intranet, and we wanted to just give some information and highlight some important facts about SNAP Employment and Training Policy, the policy that governs the way we engage SNAP participants in employment and training activities. So if you have the document that was sent to you, like I said, this came from our OneNet, and we kind of just numbered the pages so that we would have, we could be organized in what we're talking about. So if you know anything about DHS policy, you know that you might click on one portion of the policy, and in that portion of the policy, you'll get some information, and it'll send you to another place in policy. So you continue to build upon your knowledge of that policy as you navigate the electronic system that holds our policy. So the first page that you're looking at, you see PM 210600, SNAP Employment and Training, and then you will see the policy manuals that are in SNAP Employment and Training down almost to the middle of the page. So you see policy manual 210601 that talks about participation, volunteers, program requirements, accessing employability, and so on and so forth. And that's how our policy manual is organized. So this first page is somewhat of a table of contents. If you go to the page that we have labeled page 3, you will find a description of mandatory SNAP employment and training programs and how F&S tells us basically we should operate. So we have a number, right now we have a number of SNAP employment and training, what we call provider slots. And these slots are available and the Family Community Resource Centers, the local DHS offices, for the most part, generate a referral to our normal SNAP employment and training providers. So our process with EPIC will be somewhat similar to that after the participant has been randomly assigned into the research group, the treatment group. Then you will receive a referral to engage the participant in EPIC services. So on that first page, which is labeled page 3 for participation, it talks about mandatory participants. It talks about SNAP employment and training participation is not required, of course, if we don't have any slots to put people in. And it talks about who is mandatory to participate in SNAP employment and training activities. So you see the dot points that start a little bit higher than the middle of the page that starts with the person is 18 through 49. They receive benefits in this type of case. Then it goes on to talk about who is exempt, and it gives a number of reasons that exempt someone from being mandatory for SNAP employment and training activities. So you see those details there. I'm not going to read it all because I know you're well able and capable to do that yourself. So if you go to page 4, and Natasha, if someone has their hand up or has a question, certainly go ahead and stop me so we can take those questions. But this is considered just to be a review today. So if you look at page 4, you'll see the regions, the counties in Illinois where we have SNAP employment and training providers or contractors, our normal contractors that serve SNAP participants all year long. You see that on page 4. And then it gives you some information about, in Cook, we have the SNAP employment and training, FCRC. In downstate offices, that is handled by our regular FCRC. So that just gives you some information about that. If you look at page 5, it talks about volunteers and how exempt clients may volunteer for SNAP employment and training services. If you looked at the exemption reasons on that first page, it talks about, for example, someone who lives with a minor or someone who has children. They are not mandatory participants in SNAP employment and training services, but they can choose to volunteer and still receive services if they have the supportive services in place as far as child care and so forth and so on. They can still receive services. So they would be considered a volunteer. Page 6 talks about program requirements. It talks about the responsibilities of the FCRC staff. They are responsible for an initial assessment process and employability plan. It talks about the components that participants could do their activity in. It's got job search. We also have earn fare, or sometimes people call earn fare work fare, and that's a program activity whereby participants can earn their SNAP benefits in a small amount of cash, and the number of hours that they would work depends upon their benefit and then the small amount of cash, and then that they would be working for minimum wage for a number of hours. So that's our earn fare program, or our work fare program. And we do have earn fare slots in Illinois. So it gives some information about the program requirements. It talks about non-exempt customers, non-custodial parents, that fail to comply, the consequences or possible no consequences based upon their status. Page 7 at the top gives a little information about when someone may not be required to participate in SNAP employment and training services. So that gives you a little bit on that. If you look at page 8, it talks about counseling and prevention. And it talks about the number of hours someone could be assigned to counseling or prevention services, and it would be calculated into their hours for SNAP employment and training. So if you have someone who is engaged in a work activity and they need to go to counseling, or they need to have outpatient services, or they could be in services with another service provider, it gives you the number of hours that could be approved for them to participate in those activities, and they could be counted towards their SNAP employment and training participation. On page 9, it talks about the requirement of providers and the FCRC staff having regular staffing meetings, and the reason that staffing is important. Now, with our ability to have a real-time dashboard where some good communication will be going on between the providers and the FCRC, that's going to be great. But there is a requirement for the provider and the FCRC to have regular staffing. And you see a description of what a regular staffing is and what a full staffing is, and what criteria is under each one of those. So staffings between the provider and the FCRC staff are mandatory to assess progress, possibly to change services, to keep one another abreast of the progress the customer is making to reach the goals that we have for the customer. So staffings are very important in doing that. Okay. Let's look at page 11. And I'm going through this really quick. Like I said, it's meant to be just an overview of some of the policies that we'll be working under. So there's a conciliation process for mandatory participants who are mandatory to participate in services when they fail to complete a SNAP ENT requirement. So just for example, as a part of your training program, you may have a rule about a number of absences that can happen before a person would be possibly dropped from training or something of that sort. All SNAP ENT participants, if they are found to be out of compliance or if they fail to participate in an activity, in a mandatory activity, they have a process whereby we determine whether the participant had good cause, and they are given another chance to cooperate and comply. So it's a conciliation process that must be done before any possible type of sanction or loss of SNAP benefits. And it gives details on page 11 about that. Page 12, at the top of page 12, basically it says that the FCRC or the provider can actually start the conciliation process by sending a conciliation appointment notice to the participant. Um, these final pages, page 13, 14, 15, and 16, give some details about the length of sanctions, sanction reasons. These are some sanction reasons on page 15 why people can get sanctioned. Page 17 talks about good faith effort to make job contacts, and page 18 you will have all of your good cause reasons. So these are considered to be good reasons for someone not complying with their activity. So you see various what we call good cause reasons listed on page 18. And then you see the type of documentation, what would be considered appropriate documentation to verify that that person had a good cause reason for being out of compliance with their activity. And page 19 just kind of continues that. And then finally on page 20, it lets us know that participants do have a right to appeal a sanction. They do have an appeal process that they can go through if they think that they have been wrongly sanctioned, and they can appeal the sanction. So that's kind of the policy. We have something in addition? Oh, okay, I don't have page 21. But page 20, you have a page 21 that talks about appeal rights and fair hearings. They have all of this? Okay. So if you look at pages 22 through 26, it's all the details about appeal. Okay, all the details, what you can appeal, the time period, how to file an appeal, so forth and so on. Those are the client's rights. They have a right to file an appeal. Page 27 talks about transportation expenses. 28, what is allowed for job search experience, job search expenses, mandatory fees for clients that are enrolled in approved education or training programs, what can be paid, the maximum payment in a 12-month period, and that we cannot pay tuition. We can't pay mandatory fees. Page 30, books and supplies. It gives you a maximum payment also for books and supplies. It says on page 31, if the customer does not have, cannot pay for a physical exam that is required by an employer and can't go to the health department, so we could pay for that as well. That would be the last resort. But it's good that most of our SNAP participants now have medical cards, so that might not be so much of an issue, but it may come up. On page 33, job retention supports. So if a participant gets employment, this will let you know, the minimum level of employment they must have. It lets you know the dollar amounts for non-transportation and transportation-related expenses. and the criteria whereby you would be able to pay some of these expenses at the bottom of page 33. Page 34, job retention supports. And that talks about authorizing child care as a job retention support for the first 30 days of employment only. Page 35, your requirement to report to the FCRC or SNAP ENT office if a client becomes employed, starts receiving unemployment insurance, or changes that affect their benefits. All contractors will be required to report those changes to the FCRC. And on page 36, it kind of gives you the form we use for that, and it's called a 2151A to report change. And I understand
Kathy?
that form will be available electronically to submit through Illinois WorkNet.
Kathy, we have some questions from the audience. Would you like to take them now?
Sure.
All right. Emily asks, will the Earn Fair program interfere with the paid work experience CBOs will be offering?
No one in EPIC will be eligible to be in Earn Fair also. There's two separate programs, and no one in Earn Fair will be in EPIC.
All right. We also have a question from Eric Grebner. Is EPIC considered a SNAP ENT activity or program?
Yes, it is.
All right. And then from Jonathan Corvin Blackburn, for providers who already have a SNAP ENT program, will EPIC participants in the core group be served by our currently in place program, or will they remain separate? So we would have three groups: SNAP ENT group, EPIC core group, and EPIC enhanced group.
Okay, so I want to just make sure we're all using the same language. EPIC enhanced is treatment group, correct? So,
correct. This is Tammy too.
Oh, hey Tammy.
Do you want me to take this one, Kathy?
Ready? You can take that one.
Okay. The people that are assigned to the CBOs that are with EPIC, which is the treatment group, will receive EPIC services. Now, there are several of you guys that also do the regular IDES employment training program. You will still be receiving clients through that. Some of them may be core clients, and some of them may be just a general population. You won't know who's who, so when you get those clients, you won't know if they were core clients or if they're the regular general population. But regardless, even if they come in and tell you that they tried to get the EPIC project or the EPIC program and they weren't assigned to that, they were just assigned to the core group, you still need to serve them how you would serve that general population, or that how you would serve them under the traditional SNAP ENT application.
All right. Jessica Newsom has a question. It says, our finance department asked me yesterday, when do we have to start doing cost reporting in GRS? What month? What day of the month? And that, Jessica, we might want to answer that after we get done with the DHS questions. So then Andy Drillick asked, should we assume that we were awarded the amount we applied for in the proposal? When will the negotiation meetings occur? And then we'll get back to that one too, Andy, okay? Margaret asked, what will the topic of the webinar be next week? Let's get back to that one too. So Kathy or Deidre, do you have anything else that you would like to talk about the DHS policies? And are there any other questions from the audience about the DHS policies? Okay, hearing or seeing no one typing, we will move on and let Tammy answer any of those questions. I do see somebody typing, so we may be going back to DHS.
That's fine. Regarding the GRS, once the grants are established, yeah, you will be entering your cash and costs in the GRS. It's my understanding that you can enter that at any time. The expenditures, I do believe, need to be in by the 20th of each month, though. And you can request cash at any particular time, too. But I know the 20th of the month is when you need to have your costs in. And then once we get rolling, we'll be looking at your costs based upon your cash requests. And one thing I want to mention on that, too, if you haven't gotten your projections in as far as how much money you've expended for startup and what your anticipated 1 month cost would be, I need to get those in. Once again, your costs are true costs. So, it's not like you're going to take a quarter of your grant or, what proportion it out. Whatever your true costs are is what I need to know for your startup cost. And then your projected costs for that 1 month of April of production. And it's going to be a slow startup. So, keep it obviously reasonable. If I've got these, I'll call you back if I've got some extremely outrageous requests. But then the other thing, too, is grant negotiations. Yes, we're working on that. I've been pulled off on another assignment, but I'm back on. So starting the rest of this week, I want to finalize all of our grant negotiations. Predominantly anticipate getting the amount that you requested. But once again, we are going to start the grants at 50%. And not 100% because the money's going to follow the clients. And at this point, like I said, until we really get going, we don't know what the flow is going to be for clients. And let me see, what other questions?
It was the topic for next week, but then we have another question that bounced back to DHS. So can we take that one next? I just lost it. Will the report sending process be done through Illinois WorkNet or via email, or how will the logistics process work there regarding things like the Form 2151A? So, Kathy, I think that's your ball.
Yeah, is Natasha on? Can Natasha give some more details about that electronic form?
The 2151 form, A?
Yeah.
What we're working on right now is basically a place where you can enter in updated information on, that would populate the 2151A form. And so when that's released, then we'll go over that. But that's basically what you'll be completing each month or, whenever a change occurs or if you're recommending them for sanctions and so forth.
All right, we've got a couple people typing right now. So let me see what they are saying. By the way, I'm Dee Reinhardt. Some of you may know me, some of you may not.
And then this week I'm going to get, if you haven't seen it in the email, we are going to have an in-person grantee meeting April 18th. The CARE program is volunteered to host in the morning session of it, and then we will have breakout sessions at the DHS office on Clinton, I do believe. But please mark your calendars on the 18th. I am going to get agenda and an invite out this week. The CARE program, we need to be there about 7:45, so I just want to kind of let you know that. We're going to send in on the morning motivations and then have our entrance sessions with them. And then the agenda next week, we're going to be going over the EPIC procedures manual and how that relates to what they've been discussing today with the employment and training policies and procedures. And we'll send out an announcement on that on Monday also.
All right, we have a question from Margaret Haywood, who, for those of us who are not already SNAP providers, what is the 2151A?
The 2151A is a standard form that we use to report any change. So the form is basically you could report any type of change that you have it over here. Any type of change that would happen with the client during the month, from a change of address to employment to other income that you discover in the home, or if the participant for some reason becomes temporarily disabled. It could be a variety of changes that could happen that you can report on that form, the 2151A. The 2151 is the referral form that you should be receiving to initiate services with the participant. And the 2151A is the report of change.
All right, another question from the chat is from Carlos Norris. Some territories have multiple service providers. How will that impact enrollment and or outcomes without duplicating enrollment?
Okay, I'll take that one. The clients will be referred to the organizations, prior to when you're getting them there. So DHS is doing the alignment with the clients with service providers, so there will not be any duplication. Where there's multiple service providers, specifically in Chicago and in LWN 19, there's different training options with providers too. So like an example would be that, there's specific providers in Chicago that just does healthcare, manufacturing, or TDL, or hospitality. And clients are aligned with those organizations based upon, what they want to go into, occupations they want to go into too. So you don't have to worry about, the CBOs don't have to worry about the impact of enrollment or duplication in any of that process.
All right, and then we have another question about forms, and it's from Laura Irving Bailey. Will program forms be in WorkNet, or should we use current DHS forms for SNAP?
Now, there will be specific forms that are going to be included in WorkNet for the EPIC program, but for your regular program, you need to run that as you do. If you're a SNAP recipient right now for ENT, you need to continue business as usual with that. Now, on the EPIC side, we are incorporating some forms into our processes to address just that, so like the 1571, I believe, and there's going to be a couple. 1751. Thank you. 1751. So there'll be a couple forms that we're incorporating for the EPIC project. But business as usual if you currently are a SNAP ENT provider with that program.
And from Michael Williams, it says here, WIOA has funds for supportive services too. How will we ensure that participants are not receiving duplicate supportive services funds?
Well, Mike, we'll have to take a look at that. There can be co-enrollment, and so, I think in your particular case, hopefully we'll be able to, to track the clients because it's one provider. We'll address that as we go along. But that's something that obviously we need to make sure that there's no duplication in funds, being paid duplicately. Duplicately.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, Eric's typing. And are we having a webinar next week, or will it be on the 30th?
The
23rd is next week.
Yeah, we're anticipating a webinar next week on the 23rd. Yes. Okay. We originally had considered having that as an in-person meeting, but logistically that did not work out. So the in-person meeting is going to be April 18th. So there will be a webinar on the 23rd.
All right. And Eric Grebner is asking, should the initial cash request match that of the numbers we sent you for the startup first month in GRS?
Well, the initial cash request will be done in-house, so we'll do that in here for you guys. Then after that, you're going to have to report your expenditures, so you'll have to expend out that initial cash request before doing another, because then it'll be on a reimbursement basis.
You guys talk faster than I can type. All right. Eric is also saying, I think this has been answered, but can we go ahead and report expenditures at this point?
Once you have a grant agreement executed with us, yes, you can. And it's my understanding that everybody has their information in to get their IDs for the GRS, so that's great. We will offer some more training, especially once we get the grants initiated and start up, just to go over the GRS process again, because I know that was a couple weeks ago, so we'll do another webinar on that. And if you have not gotten your information in for Levi regarding the data systems with DHS, we need for you to get that information in too. And there was one form he sent the information out. There was the agency-wide systems document that is not required. You just have to sign the affidavits that indicate that you've participated in the webinar and reviewed those two PowerPoint presentations and understand the material.
All right, Jonathan Corbin Blackburn is asking, what is the initial cash request? You mentioned a percentage of the grant.
No, the initial cash request is actual expenditures. You do not want to do a percent of the grant. We want to know what your actual costs have been through the end of March for your startup.
And Eric Smith is asking, how are we to handle hiring on additional staff to accommodate the SNAP? I'm thinking means EPIC. Participants being that the money will follow the client. Will we pay for staff?
Yeah, this is a tricky project. You're going to obviously need staff on for this project. And like I said, until we actually get the flow going, we're not going to know what staff's going where. Staff can be paid for, obviously, out of this. But it is a performance-based on the back end, too, which means that, based upon the information that you've provided for service numbers, that's taken into consideration, at the end of the grant, too. So that is a tricky question. It's, this grant definitely has to be managed, pretty effectively locally, especially in the startup. And then when we get rolling, hopefully, it'll be a little bit easier to manage.
Well, and part of that initial startup money, Tammy, can't it be used to help pay for staff?
Yes. Yes, it can.
All right. I do not see anybody else typing. All right. Tammy, did you have anything else that you wanted to address before we end the webinar specifically, or was this one basically featuring the DHS policy items?
Yeah, this is basically that. I think I pretty covered everything I wanted to regarding, the other things like the GRS and the data agreements that we need. Like I said, next week we're going to be looking at the EPIC policy and how it relates with the SNAP ENT policy. Just pencil in the 18th of April for in grantee meeting. And I will be reaching out. If I haven't gotten with you already, no worries. I am reaching out with you to finalize our grant negotiations. So.
And do you know, I'm typing it into the chat pod, do you know the location for, can we put that in the chat pod for everybody? What's the location of the
Yeah, it's going to start out at the CARA program. And
is that K-A-R-A or C-A-R-A?
C-A-R-A.
All right. And if anybody is on the call from the CARA program, if you could type your address into the chat pod.
And I'm just looking it up right now, too, as we speak.
Well, Mary Beth is from CARA, so she can do,
great.
there it is. Very good. And how close
and thank you, Mary Beth, for facilitating
How close are you to any public transportation, Mary Beth? What's the best way for people to get there if they're coming in on public? And that will help us with any of the invitation stuff as well.
Correct.
I know I'll be riding the Metro down. So.
And we will be having some of the afternoon sessions, late morning afternoon sessions at the DHS office, which is my understanding it's just a couple blocks away from the CARE program. So hopefully it'll be a great day, and it'll be a great break to walk over to the DHS office.
All right. So they're near the CTA Blue Line, the Clinton stop. And Kathy is asking if there will be a block of rooms for us traveling long distances.
Yes. Yes, I will give you information on where to stay.
All right, so that'll all be in your formal
Right,
invitation.
and that's walking distance. There's a place right there, walking distance too from the CARA program.
All right, very good. Anybody else have any questions for us to answer? Do you know the address of the DHS office, or it's within walking distance, you said?
Yeah, it's on Clinton. Let me,
It's 401 South Clinton.
perfect, thank you.
All right. Yay. And that's Chicago. Deidre, do you happen to know the zip code?
60607.
60607. All right. And yes, Kara, Mary Beth said that Kara is close to the Union Station, so that works. And Clinton isn't too far. It's a nice walk. I prefer to walk whenever I go downtown. It just gives me a feeling of good exercise. So, all right. Oh, close to Ogilvy as well. So that's pretty good. You can get off if you come into Union, you can, and you're riding a Metro down, you can go out the Madison Street exit, and that's like a half a block away from the Ogilvy station as well. So, all right. Any other questions from the group? Hearing none or seeing no typing. Kathy or Deidre, do you have anything else that you'd like to say at the last moment?
We're encouraged and excited to get the program up and running, and hopefully there are not too many more questions about policy. If you have any questions or need forms, let us know, and we look forward to working with you and meeting you and seeing you on April the 18th.
Great. All right, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Tammy, do you have anything else you want to say?
Nope, just have a great afternoon.
All right, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Enjoy, take care. Bye-bye.